Despite being a billionaire heir, the rich second generation mercilessly shot the elderly woman in front of her. The girl, witnessing her only relative brutally killed before her eyes, was overwhelmed by grief and threw herself at the murderer without hesitation. However, she was immediately knocked unconscious by the heiress's bodyguard. Afterwards, they dragged the two of them into a wooden cabin at the back, and then the heiress set the room on fire. While they were discussing how to cover up their crime, they were shocked to find that the girl had miraculously survived. Of course, she quickly realized the danger she was in. Looking at her dead grandmother beside her, she was filled with immense sorrow. But this was no time to grieve. After saying her final goodbye to her loved one, the girl finally left the house through the back door, reluctant to part. However, she hadn't run far before she stopped in her tracks. At this moment, the flames of revenge were burning fiercely within her. She hated these ruthless criminals with all her heart and swore to make them pay in blood. Meanwhile, the heiress and her group hadn't left yet, but they never expected that the girl had secretly returned. She managed to knock the driver unconscious in one swift move. After dragging the driver out of the car, the girl found a lighter inside the vehicle. She then tore off a piece of the driver's sleeve, stuffed it into the car's gas tank, and without hesitation set it on fire. The violent explosion left everyone present in a state of panic, but they still managed to spot the girl as she tried to escape. At that moment, two of them hurriedly grabbed submachine guns from the car, and the heiress gave the order to hunt down the girl. However, she could never have imagined that all the decisions made today would inevitably lead her into an abyss from which there would be no return. The girl's name was Kelly, a native of the local indigenous people. Since childhood, her father had trained her to be a warrior, teaching her many wilderness survival skills and combat techniques. But unfortunately, after losing her mother at a young age, her father was also taken away by the police on charges of terrorism, and his fate remains unknown to this day. Having lost both parents, she lived with her grandmother, and although their life was very simple, they were happy together. However, this peace was shattered with the arrival of two people. The heiress directly offered to buy their land, planning to turn it into a tourist attraction, and even offered a high price. Faced with such temptation, her grandmother firmly refused because their family had lived there for generations and did not want outsiders to disturb their lives. After sending these uninvited guests away, Kelly felt that things might not be so simple, so she seized the opportunity to secretly sneak into their car. After arriving at a larger camp, Kelly sneaked in quietly. By eavesdropping, she finally uncovered the secret of this group. It turned out that they had discovered a substance containing precious metals here, and in order to obtain it legally, they used the guise of developing tourism to deceive the local indigenous people. However, the heiress was unaware that his conversation with his father had already been recorded by Kelly outside the tent. Just as she was about to leave quietly, she was spotted. Soon, at the shout of this person, security personnel rushed out and began to chase after Kelly, but because the soil in the forest was wet and muddy, their vehicle broke down not long after setting off and couldn't go any further. Helpless, the group had no choice but to continue the chase on foot. Since Kelly had grown up here and was more familiar with the terrain, she managed to board an aerial cable car just a second before they caught up to her, smoothly crossing a mountain pass under the watchful eyes of her pursuers. Although Kelly narrowly escaped from her pursuers, she had no idea that her fate was about to change dramatically because the heiress had already recognized her. Soon, the heiress brought people to Kelly's home. And so, the shadow of danger descended. In order to cover up her own crime, the heiress was determined not to let the girl leave the forest alive. Relying on their superior numbers and equipment, they were intent on silencing Kelly for good. But what no one expected was that the seemingly delicate girl would actually take the initiative to fight back. Because all through the night, a pair of eyes had been watching them from the darkness. By the next morning, Kelly finally found her chance. One of them had become separated from the group. Kelly acted decisively, showing no mercy. After seizing the opponent's knife, she struck a fatal blow. Of course, the commotion immediately alerted the others, and they opened fire on her, but Kelly still managed to escape. This time, however, the heiress was determined not to let the opportunity slip by, and immediately launched a pursuit of Kelly. Faced with gunfire behind her, Kelly started to panic. Although she was very familiar with the terrain, she still ran in a flustered and haphazard way, and her brightly colored clothes made it even harder to shake off her pursuers. In the end, she found herself cornered with nowhere to run. With no other choice, she raised her hands in surrender. At that moment, the heiress stopped the bodyguards from shooting, thinking she had already won, but she didn't realize this was a mistake because Kelly's surrender was actually part of her own plan.